Welcome to this webinar. It's an introduction to APA Style, the 7th edition. I'm Julie Johnson Archer with the Online Writing Center. We are happy to welcome you to ACU if you're a new student. If you're watching in real time, welcome to week 1 of the term. I am also joined by my colleague, Dr. Basil Considine, and so he and I will be here and ready to answer your questions. If you are brand new to APA, welcome. This will be a really great webinar to watch and get an introduction, get a feel for what APA is and how you'll be using it in your writing. However, maybe you've been around a while and you have some APA questions. This is a great time for you to get some answers to your questions. So feel free to chat us in the Zoom chat bar and we'll be happy to answer your questions. This webinar will be recorded and you'll have access to all of these slides. So you can feel free to download these slides after the webinar is over. You'll find them on our website. So don't feel like you need to memorize or write down everything as you watch. You can refer back to these slides and all of this information later. A little bit about the Online Writing Center. So we offer resources and different services related to writing, and one of those things is tutoring. So if you would like to have a paper looked over by a tutor, we have appointments available at WC Online. That's our scheduling website. So that link is right here in the upper right-hand corner. If it's your very first time to make an appointment with us, we have a video about 8 minutes long. It'll walk you through all the steps to make sure that you have your Writing Center appointment scheduled and that you know how to submit your paper to us. The tutors in the Writing Center work with you at any stage of your writing, whether you are brand new and you've just received your first essay assignment, or you're a doctoral student, you're working on your chapters in some final stages, perhaps of a big project. So we are here for you the whole way through your journey at ACU. Our tutoring appointments are asynchronous in nature. What that means is that you upload your paper to us and the tutor will send you feedback via email in about 24 hours. That email will be titled Writing Center Report. So be on the lookout within the 24 hours after your appointment for that email. However, if you want some real-time engagement with a tutor, you want a phone call, maybe a Zoom screen sharing appointment like this, what we're doing right now, you can request a real-time appointment just by emailing us. Here's our email, onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu. As our schedule fills up this at each term, we do our best to accommodate your requests, but most of our tutoring is asynchronous. So if you sign up for an appointment, know that you don't have to be available at that time to talk to anyone. You just need to get us your paper by that time. I'll go over this again in just a moment, but here also at the bottom of this slide is our Writing Center's website, and that link will take you to our website with all of our resources, blog posts, webinar recordings that we've already done, and again, webinar slides as well. So here is the submission process if you're making a tutoring appointment with us. So first you want to create an appointment at WC Online. And again, that's linked in the previous slide. You must click Create Appointment to save your slot. And if you do it successfully, you will receive an email confirmation that your tutoring appointment has been scheduled successfully. So you want to make sure that this step in the process is complete. That lets the tutor know, yes, I have an appointment with you at this time. The second step is to submit your paper to the tutor. And you don't actually have to do this step right when you make an appointment. For example, let's say you have an essay that's due next Monday, but you haven't started it. You know you'd like feedback before you turn it into your professor, though. Go ahead and make an appointment for, let's say, Saturday evening to save your spot in our schedule. Then you can work on your paper for the next few days, and anytime before your appointment on Saturday, you go back into the appointment form and submit your paper to the appropriate link. I mention this because some students have told me that they thought they had to have their paper ready when they made their appointment, so they never signed up for appointments. We recommend making your appointments early, especially as the term picks up and our schedule fills up. So if you have any questions about this process or you want to check to make sure you submitted your paper correctly, again, I encourage you to watch the video on the previous slide to get a better idea of what to expect with this process. Then the third step is you wait to receive feedback. Again, the tutor will send you an email within 24 hours of the time of your appointment. So if you submitted your paper for an appointment on Saturday evening, by Sunday evening, you'll receive your feedback. Okay, we have 3 learning objectives for the rest of this webinar. The first is to become familiar with APA page formatting. What does your document, your essay need to look like before you turn it in? Second is to become familiar with APA in-text citation methods. How are you going to refer to your sources in your sentences and paragraphs? And third, become familiar with APA references pages. So how are you going to cite your sources at the end of your document? A little bit about APA, again, if you're brand new, APA stands for the American Psychological Association. And this association created this style of documentation. It's used mainly in the social sciences, like in psychology, sociology, education, and others. Since 1929, the APA manual has been developed to provide writers and scholars like you with a standard set of guidelines for citing your resources, formatting your document, and ethically communicating research and your arguments. Do note that we're currently using the 7th edition. This is the most updated version of APA of that manual, and this is a link to the manual itself. Perhaps you are familiar with other citation methods like MLA, if you come from the languages, or Chicago style, coming from Bible and history. And the good thing to note is if you're familiar with these other formats for citation, a lot of these same ideas apply in APA. You can still go back and forth between these different formats pretty well. So APA style is important for many reasons, but here are a few of the reasons why it matters that you're watching this right now. APA makes it easy to find your sources. Now this goes not only for you as you are writing your papers, maybe you go back to a paper you've written last term and you want to find some resources that you've already used and you remember but you can't quite find, you can find them pretty easily if you've done your due diligence in citing them in APA. It also makes it easy for others to find your sources. So if your professor is reading your paper and they want to check on this interesting source that you found in your research, because you cited it in APA, they'll have easy and quick access to locating and reading that source. It's also an institutional standard. It's used for most of ACU's online programs. If by chance your professor asks you for a different citation style, you can ask them for more resources on that. The Writing Center offers APA resources in abundance on our website. APA is commonly used for publication as well. So if you are preparing to publish an article or working on anything that you would like to eventually publish, using APA is a great way to prepare yourself for publication. A lot of journals out there require you to use specific citation styles, especially for the sciences, the social sciences. They'll require you to use APA. Again, it's easily converted among other citation standards. When you use it properly, it eliminates unnecessary work, and it maintains a standard for ethical communication. It really helps us to avoid plagiarism when used correctly. So in general, let's talk about that first objective, the formatting of your page. So your papers should be double-spaced throughout, not single-spaced, not more than double-spaced. Everything will be evenly double-spaced. Even your references, entries, and block quotes, everything's double-spaced. You'll want to use 1-inch margins on all sides of your paper. Use Times New Roman or a similar 12-point font, and include a page number in the upper right-hand corner of every page. So I mention all of these things so that you're familiar with that formatting. We also have a course paper template that Dr. Considine has developed for us to use. So I'm going to show you and do a little demonstration of using that template, because all of these things are automatically formatted for you if you're using our template. So I'm going to pull up a course in Canvas and I'll share my screen. I saw we have some DNP students in the room. You might be in Nursing 701. Even if you're not in this course or even the program, DNP program, you will have all your assignments will look similar to this one. So let's take a look at this assignment, and then I'll pull up the template and show you how I would get started working on this paper using our ACU course paper template. Okay, so this assignment is actually coming up in this course. It's the problem of interest, or POI, for clinical inquiry. So let's scroll down. You'll read through the assignment instructions. And the problem of interest is a really important thing to develop as a nursing student, something that your doctoral project eventually will flow out of. So here we see the main instructions for this paper. Compose a 5 to 7 page paper. That doesn't include the title page or the references page. Typically, if you've got a page range, it will just be the body of your paper, not the title page and references page, or abstract page if you are required to have one. So these pages should describe your problem of interest. It must include the following information: background of the problem of interest, the purpose of the project, significance of the POI, and the nature of the project, or what you intend to do. So we can see that this is going to become part of Chapter 1 of your scholarly project paper. We've got some other instructions here and resources, it looks like, about APA and writing resources. If you scroll past the assignment, we've also got the rubric. So we want to just check that we have all of these things before we turn it in. And that goes again for any course that you're working on. So now let me show you. I've downloaded the template, so let me share what that looks like with you. Okay, you should see Microsoft Word now. Let me know if you don't in the chat room. I've downloaded the template, which you have the link in the chat room. It's also on our website under APA resources. So I want to show you what it looks like. If you are new to using templates, this will be a helpful little time to familiarize yourself with how to use the template. So again, you'll notice a few things off the bat. We've got page numbers in the upper right-hand corner already there for you. So you don't have to add those in or try and figure out how to get them to look right in APA style. That's there. The margins are 1 inch. Everything is double spaced and in the right font. So that's a really great way to know that you're already in APA format, is by using our template. You can, again, download this and open it up for every new paper that you're going to write in your courses. So let's work on just the title page here for a moment. You'll want to replace this title with the title of the assignment. Maybe you give it your own title. I'll just go with the assignment title from Canvas. The problem of interest for clinical inquiry. All right, so I'll plug in all of this information. And you can see in our template, we have these comments here for you just to explain a few things. If you don't need the comments anymore, you can go up to the Review tab in Word. If it looks hidden, then just hit Review again. And right here, we've got the options to delete comments. So that's all you need to do there. But your affiliation, in this case, it will be School of Nursing. You can put your program there. And then replace the course with the course number. And you'll notice just by deleting what was there before, that comment also went away. So there's another good way to do that. The instructor's name goes here and the due date. And this one I noted was October 26. All right, so there you have it. The title page, it looks great, and it's in APA format. All right, so let's scroll down. This assignment did not ask us to have an abstract, and most, if not all of your course assignments, they won't need an abstract. This is really more for the doctoral projects, the longer works, or if you're practicing for more formal APA publishing. So if you don't need it, you'll just want to delete that. Okay. So now we have the body, the main body of our paper. I'm just going to copy and paste that title. You want the same title from your title page to be at the top of the body of your paper. Again, you'll see it's bolded, it's centered, and you capitalize all the major words, including words with 4 or more letters. So in this example, we've got some filler text, again, some comments here with a video walkthrough for if you need a reminder for how to use the template. But you can see, all right, this is how an APA paper should look. Now I'm going to delete this filler text and just show you how I'm going to start as if I were going to answer the assignment prompt. All right, so the introduction paragraph does not need a heading that says introduction. In APA style, that's considered redundant, so instead, we're just going to begin with that introduction paragraph. I'm going to start writing it in, the problem of interest. Go ahead and give myself that abbreviation, POI, in parentheses. Okay, now this is actually all the way to the left. We want it to look like a regular body paragraph. So what I'm going to show you now is the styles pane. If you're unfamiliar with styles in Word, this is what allows us to automate a lot of the APA formatting for you. So if I highlight this title or put my cursor in our title and push APA level 1, we can see, that's the current style in use. And if I needed it to be an APA Level 2 heading instead, I just push APA Level 2, and I can trust that, okay, that looks like APA Level 2 heading. It's a subheading now. What I can do for the paragraphs, if things are looking a little off, maybe you copy and paste something in and it's not the right font or size, you can put your cursor in that paragraph or highlight what you're looking to style and apply the body text reference. Try clear the formatting if needed and push body text. Okay, there we go. Now, looking back at the assignment instructions, I know what this paper is going to be about. So I don't even have to have my problem of interest or the content of my paper yet. I can look at that assignment and go ahead and start building this sort of outline in the template for myself. I know I'm going to need to introduce that problem of interest here in the introduction, so I'm just giving myself the starting of each sentence. And if I only have maybe 5 minutes to sit down and write, I know I could finish 1 or 2 sentences. And because I set it up at the start of the week, based exactly on the assignment instructions, I know I'll be writing on task. So I've got some questions on downloading the template in the chat room. I want to mention that you also want to know that you have access to Microsoft Suite. So Microsoft Office, like Word, what I'm showing you here, you have access to all of that for free as an ACU student. So you'll need to use your ACU email address to log in to Microsoft Office and download Word if you want to download PowerPoint, any of the Microsoft Office apps. If you have more questions about that, you can find help with Team 55 and other resources, maybe from your student services advisor. So that's a great thing to know that you have access to as a student. All right, moving forward, I know I'll need to address the purpose of this study. Okay, so again, you can give yourself filler text, you could make this bullet points, but just based on that little assignment instruction paragraph, I already have the start of a really good, strong paragraph to address that prompt. Before I go back to the slides, I want to go ahead and show you how I would add in some headings for this paper. It's going to be 5 to 7 pages long, so I'm going to split it up into sections based on what the assignment has asked for. Okay, so once you type in some headings, again, this is based exactly on the assignment instructions. I really haven't had to do much thinking on how or what I'm going to include in this paper, just because the assignment has outlined it for me. I'm going to use APA Level 2 headings to give myself subheadings for each section. Each of these are equally important sections. If you wanted, however, you could talk about the project, the purpose here, And then if you think of the significance as a subsection of the purpose of the project, you can make it an APA Level 3 heading. So you can see kind of the difference here. The only thing is that APA Level 3 headings are italicized. So from here, we're using body text, and we can plug in, all right, what is some of the background of this issue? Again, you might use bullet points, whatever works for you. All right, so we've got just a little bit of information, background of local problem. How did it start? What has been done to address this problem already, if anything, and what still needs to be done to address this problem of interest? Now, just with these few bullet points, I know that if I can come back to this paragraph for just a short amount of time and answer these things, I will have a solid paragraph to get me started with this paper. And you can do this at the start of a week before you really even have done any research or thinking about your answers. I'll show you one more thing before we move on. So at the end of the template, we have an example references page. And so here you'll just delete these filler text and replace them with your reference entries. And again, this would not be included in the page range or page count of your paper, but this gives you a good idea. Maybe I'm gonna be using a journal article. This first one is a good example, of how to properly cite a journal article. You give the title of the source. I'll go over all of this in the webinar, but if you need a reminder, it often helps to plug in your very own right under it using the template as an example. Okay, so I hope this run through of the template and an example of how you can tackle your assignments using our template to create an outline. I hope that's helpful to you, and I hope you do make use of this template this term. I'm going to go back to our main slides now. And as I go through these slides and this information, let me know if you have any questions, you want me to go over something again, or if you have other APA questions. Again, we're happy to answer your questions. So, in all of your APA papers, it follows this consistent pattern. You'll start with your title page, you'll have your abstract next if you need one, the main body of your paper, and then your references, just as you saw in the template. So again, for your title page, here's the information you need to include and where. One thing I'll note about titles in your papers, this also goes for all 5 levels of heading in APA style. It uses title case, and what we mean by title case is capitalize every important word in the title and any words that are 4 or more letters, including words like with, from, through, things we normally consider unimportant, but they will be capitalized in APA. One thing to note, if you do need to write an abstract, which is just a concise summary of everything in your paper, there is no indent. Just like you expect there to be an indent for every new paragraph in the body of your paper, the abstract does not have that indent. And then for the doctoral students in the room especially, you'll be writing an abstract for your doctoral projects and dissertations. You'll have the keywords here, and they are indented. Those are just the key tags that you would want someone, if they're looking up your work, these are the words that they would be searching. Again, formatting the main body of your paper, continue the page numbers, and it looks like so. Here are the 5 levels of APA headings. Again, you saw them in the template, but if you're making your own, formatting your own document, here's what those headings should look like. For most of your papers, I think you'll normally have level 1, of course, for your title, and level 2, maybe level 3. As you get into longer chapters and longer papers, you might also have some of these 4 and 5 level headings. So the rest of this webinar covers the last 2 objectives, referencing sources in text and referencing them at the end of your papers. So let's think about referencing your sources in text. First, it's important to consider how and where you might incorporate your sources into your paragraphs. So if you think of your paragraph structure following something similar to what you see on the screen, 5 to 7 sentences, you begin with a topic sentence. You might have a citation in your topic sentence if you're addressing something that someone else has already discovered. You might, but you also might make your own claim in that sentence. Then you have evidence or argumentation, and here is where you for sure will have in-text citations. You're supporting your main claim with evidence from outside sources. You'll analyze that evidence. You always want to explain how a quote or a paraphrase from another source relates to your claim, and you'll repeat that as necessary. Provide more evidence, more analysis, and so on. You'll also have a sentence of synthesis in most of your academic paragraphs, and this is where you draw all of the evidence that you've discussed together and provide your own take, your own conclusion on what it all means. Finally, you'll have a concluding or transitioning sentence to wrap everything up or move into the next paragraph logically and smoothly. So most of the slides here address formal citations, but let me also touch on informal citations. So like I said in the previous slide, if you're making a factual claim or you are quoting someone else directly in your papers, you will use a formal citation. Also, if you are identifying a specific thing, perhaps a term that someone has coined, or a specific model or theory, you'll also want a formal citation for where you're getting that information from. However, it's also good to provide some informal citations when necessary. This is really helpful to help ground your arguments and add to your credibility. So if you're referring to something that you've learned because you've been an ER nurse for 10 years, mention that. In my 10 years as an ER nurse, I observed this problem. You might even have a sentence like that in the example I was showing you in our template. It's best used, an informal citation is best used to help ground your inquiry and establish, again, your credibility. Why should your professor or your readers listen to you? Well, you have a lot of professional experience that this information is coming out of. So here are the basic elements of in-text citations. You start with the author's last name. The author can also be an organization, for instance, the CDC. Then you provide the publication year. Sometimes if you're using information from a website, the date of publication might be unclear. And so in that case, you put N period D period for no date. And then page number. If you are directly quoting from an article, you'll provide the page number. If you're quoting from something on a website, perhaps that doesn't have page numbers, you can use the paragraph number with the abbreviation PARA, period. So let's take a look at how that will end up in your sentences. There's two ways to do this correctly. You've got the first with a signal phrase. This is where you insert the author's name often into the sentence itself with this template and example. So you'll provide the author. Every time you provide an author's name, you'll put the year in parentheses directly after it. So in this example, Jones 2015 asserted, blah, blah, blah. Then at the end of the sentence is where you put the page number if you need it, if you've directly quoted. If you are paraphrasing, you are not required to include the page number, but you always need the author and the year. So here's another way to provide in-text citations, and this is where you put all of that information at the end of the sentence. So you'll have your own lead-in to the quote. For example, the experts found, quote, quote, quote. Then in parentheses, we have Jones 2015, pages 12 through 13. And you'll note pages, if it's more than one, is two P's with a period. Also note that the ending period comes after the citation every time. So this is how you'll cite your sources in the body of your papers. All right, so here's an example. This is a paragraph from a journal article, and I want to use this blocked out part in a quote in my own paper. I would say the author and year, Roland 2018, cautioned against, quote, a single dimension approach to understanding individuals, end quote, page 72. And you'll note that only the text that's coming directly from the original source is in the quotation marks. This is really important to have exactly the same words and using quotation marks at the beginning and the end of your quoted material. Sometimes folks might forget that last quotation mark, and if that's the case, that's an accident, but it's also considered plagiarism in Turnitin, or at least it gets flagged because it says, something is up here. This doesn't look quite right. It looks like it's coming from somewhere else, but it hasn't been cited correctly. So you need all of these elements to correctly cite your sources and avoid plagiarism. So here's a moment for you to practice applying what I've been discussing so far. So I've highlighted part of this paragraph. Now go ahead and think through how would you quote this in your own sentence, and how would you incorporate those elements of the author, I've given it to you here, Levine, the date, and the page number. I'll give you a moment. Okay, so here is one way that you can do this correctly. Researchers have discovered that, quote, English is increasingly becoming the world's second language, end quote. In parentheses, Levine, 2018, page 2, end parentheses, period. You'll also note that these elements are separated with a comma in your in-text citations. A little bit more information about in-text citations, about citing classroom materials. So you might have reason to cite a PowerPoint, maybe a lecture, and other course-specific materials. You can definitely cite those things in your papers if you're using it for a class. These materials are not available to the public though, so especially for doctoral students or those of you who are publishing your work, you will not be able to cite these internal ACU login resources. Instead, you'll need to cite these things as personal communications. Now, personal communications are interviews, emails, things that are not published or accessible to the wider public. So here we've got an example. According to the principal of the school, 6 teachers were hired that year. And for my in-text citation, I just put personal communication and the date, or as close to the date as I can approximate. One thing to note, especially if you're doing your own research, participant data do not require citations. So if you're quoting a participant and referring to interviews that you've done as a part of your larger research for your dissertation or doctoral study, you do not need to have this citation of personal communication. That is data that is just automatically known in your paper that it belongs to your participants. So in a longer essay, you might have a reason to include a long quote, one that's 40 or more words. This is pretty unusual in shorter papers or most of your course papers, where you should really stick to short quotations and paraphrasing those quotations as well. But if you do have cause to use a long quote, here is what that should look like. You begin that block quote on its own line, indented ½ inch, and actually the whole block quote is indented evenly, ½ inch from the margin. That sets it apart and signals visually to your reader, this is a long quote. You still need to give credit, so we've got, in this example, the author and date are in the sentence leading into the quote, and then the page number comes at the end. You can also, again, put all of that information at the end in parentheses. One small note, normally that period comes after the citation, after the parentheses, but for a block quote, since it's usually multiple sentences long, you put that citation after the final period. So we've been thinking about quoting others' words. Something you should begin doing even more often than quoting is paraphrasing. So let me go over what that means. Paraphrasing is when you use your own words to convey someone else's ideas. Paraphrasing is usually superior to quoting because it shows your professors that you understood the readings enough to put them into your own words while communicating the same idea. Paraphrasing, unlike quoting, does not require quotation marks, but it does require a citation every time. One more note about paraphrasing, you want to change not only the words with synonyms or other words, that's not enough to paraphrase correctly. You also need to change the order that the words are in. So take that idea, perhaps you found a really good idea from a journal article in your readings or in your research, then look away from that quote and try and rearrange the idea. State it in a new way that sounds like your voice, and that is going to be successful paraphrasing. So here is an example of an in-text citation of a paraphrase. We've got this idea from an original text. In accordance with past disaster mental health work, we promoted and addressed the importance of maintaining basic needs like rest, relaxation, nutrition, physical activity, sleep, and social connectedness. So I don't really need to quote that whole thing in my paper. The wording is not so powerful or well said that I need to quote it word for word. So I'm going to decide, no, I'm going to put this idea into my own words and give credit to the authors. Here's how I would do that. Gonzalez et al. 2020 emphasized the need to support healthcare workers' mental health and basic human needs. So here you can see I've conveyed that same idea, as in the original. I've given credit to the authors of the article, but I've used my own words and I've reordered that idea. I've even shown what I see the authors doing is emphasizing something. So that's my analysis of what the authors are actually doing. So paraphrasing is a skill. It takes practice, and I encourage you to start practicing your paraphrasing skills even in your first papers this term. A few more things about in-text citations before we move on. If you have a sentence where you are citing multiple articles or sources, you will join them into one parenthetical citation. So you'll separate those citations with a semicolon, as in this example, and also you will sort them alphabetically by the first author's last name. So let's go over this example so that you get a visual. I'm going to start with the first citation because it starts with Brown, and Carmelli will come after it, alphabetically. Brown and Fields, 2011. All right, that's the end of that citation, so I'm giving a semicolon, and Carmelli et al. 2006. So that's how you can cite multiple sources that both say the same thing. It's a good way to do that. You may have noticed in the previous slide, et al., and you might be wondering what that means. So when you're citing a source with 3 or more authors, you want to cite just the first author's name and add et al. Each time. Et al. Just means and others, so it saves you time, saves you space as well. So for example, Jones et al. 2002 indicated that students who participated in discussions did better on tests. So I've paraphrased their ideas, and again, it's ET space AL period. Don't forget that little period after all. If you are new to APA, writing in APA is something that you'll learn more about is verb tenses and the particular style of writing. So more than just the format of the paper and how you cite your sources, APA also has guidelines for the style of your writing. So it's important to know what they are saying about verb tenses and when to use each. The most common one you'll need to know is to use past tense when referring to what authors have done or said or written in the past. So if you are introducing an idea, a discovery, like so, Schubert 2012 described this as such and such. We use the past tense because Schubert described it in the past in 2012. So really for all published articles, they've done this research already. So we're going to say what they did in past tense. However, you can use present tense, and you should, for ongoing phenomena. For example, only 5% of patients do not object to getting shots. Even though this author found this out in 2017, this is something that's ongoing. This author is saying 5% of patients in general do not object, not 5% of a certain group in the past. And then future tense. These are more straightforward. It's for things that haven't taken place yet. Often when you're writing about the study that you hope to do, you will use future tense. The intervention will be implemented at this hospital. All right, for the last few minutes before I turn the room over to my colleague for his webinar, I'm going to discuss the last objective of the evening, which is the references page. So this is some information about how to format it. Again, you can automatically format your references page using the template. Again, this is what it looks like. The reference entries are, again, they're double-spaced, and they use what's called a hanging indent. So it's the opposite of a paragraph indent. Instead of the first line being indented, the second and all subsequent lines are indented. And the reason for this is that it highlights the last name of that author. So let's say we were looking for Gonzalez et al. In the references list. We saw you quoted them or paraphrased them, and now I'm interested to go back to that source. I can easily locate it by finding the last name. And these are alphabetized by the last name. So these last few slides are ones that I suggest you come back to when you are actually making your references list. Having a template in front of you is the best way to ensure that you've got all the information you need and it's formatted correctly. But in general, no matter what type of source that you are citing, whether it's a book, book chapter, journal article, YouTube video, you name it, you're going to be answering these 4 questions. Who wrote it, who created it, when was it published or put out into the world, what is it, what's the title or what is it called, and where can I find it? So if you're answering those questions, you will be able to put together your reference entries. So for a book, it looks very straightforward. You put the author's last name, and if they have a first or middle name that you are aware of, you abbreviate it to the initials, separated by a space, a period and a space. The year, the title of the work, and one thing I'll note, this uses sentence case. So unlike the titles and headings that I said use title case in the body of your paper, in the references list, it works a little differently. You want to use sentence case, meaning just the first word of the title and the subtitle are capitalized. And for a book, where is it? It's is the publisher information, like the American Psychological Association. So I'm going to show you, here is an example of how to put it together, looking at the title page of a book. Information that you would need for a book chapter looks very similar, but there's a little bit more information. If you are citing something that's within a larger work, like a book chapter, a journal article that's in a journal, these are smaller works that you cannot find on their own. You could, not like a book or a movie or a magazine that you can buy off the shelf. That's a larger work, it comes on its own. Smaller works are not italicized. So this is the title of the chapter, and it's in the editor's title of the book, which is italicized, because that book is something you could buy off the shelf or off of Amazon. And we've got an example. Again, looks fairly similar, but if you were to cite an article from a journal, we've got the basic information of who, when, what is it. And what is it for a journal article has a bit more information. The title of the journal, followed by the volume number, and then the issue number. At the end, to answer where can I find it, you will almost always put the DOI. DOI is a direct object identifier. It is a direct link to that source. So if I were to click on this link, it would take me directly to this journal article. If there's no DOI, you can provide a link to the journal homepage or a link that's available on the public to access that article. When you're looking at a journal article, here is all the information. So I've just highlighted where to look for most of that information. We've got a lot of great upcoming webinars, so I listed the next few here. You can also see the whole schedule for this term on our website. Again, you can see up next is writing about the Bible and history. So in just a moment, I will turn the room over for that webinar. I've listed some resources here for you. Again, the APA template is the second link. The first link is something I'd like you to know about, especially if you're learning APA. We've got a self-paced course. This is just a resource course for you in Canvas, and all ACU online students are enrolled in it. So look through that course, use it as you need throughout the term. And if you are interested in quizzing yourself on APA and things that you should know about APA format, you can go through this. We've given you the answer to all the questions is no. So that's a good exercise to go through if you're interested in learning a few more details. You can always contact us if you have just a short APA-related question. You don't need a full tutoring appointment necessarily for it. You can just email us at onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. Schedule an appointment with us to have a tutoring session, get some feedback on your writing. It's free, and we are happy to do it for you, and access all of our APA resources and webinars here at the Writing Center's website. So at this point, I need to give the room over to my colleague. I hope that you learned something about APA and have a great rest of your evening.